Hey, how's it going? It's your Challenger Coach, Adam Warrior Isles here with our newest Mobalytics tier list video for patch 9.19. So without further wait, let's jump right into the Mobalytics Ascendant call to arms. If you're an expert for a champion, consider becoming a Mobalytics Ascendant for our community. A Mobalytics Ascendant helps us create the advice, builds, and guides for our champion pages. We currently have a bounty for RP or cash if you fill out matchup advice. To apply or get more details, check out the description below. And if you're interested in seeing my opinion on the patch notes, you can check that out in the patch rundown, which is also in the description. Now with that out of the way, let's get right into the tier list. Starting off our S tier roster for the normal list, we got Garwin, Nasus, Jax, Teemo, Yorick, Urgot, Alawi, Mordekaiser, Singed, Kled, and Kayle, who was my pick of the patch. Kayle, ever since his buffs, has been rising in popularity and win rate at a pretty fast pace, jumping over 2% win rate between patches 9.17 and 18. This happened because Kayle's laning phase is a lot easier compared to before, as she is allowed to push and poke people out more consistently with the reduced CD on Q compared to past iterations. I expect her win rate to increase even more once people figure out actually what to build on her. It seems like after hours of research that people are just buying random items on her. It doesn't even seem to matter. Luden's first, Nashor's, Gunblade, they all have pretty much the same win rate and nothing stands out, so you'll have to experiment yourself on what build suits you the best. If you're wondering when to pick her, you should pick her into tanks like Shen or juggernauts like Mordekaiser or Darius, who she can easily cut out with her Q spam. Just avoid the Trinity matchup unless you feel like losing some LP that day, which I guess is totally up to you if you want. As for the rest of the changes, we have Heimerdinger moving to B tier thanks to some really nice buffs to his Q damage and stun duration. Every top laner is now super excited to see another mage who bullies melee champions added into the meta again. Next up, Sion, another fan favorite of top laners, is going to be moving from B tier to A tier thanks to some buffs to his W, allowing him to compete a lot easier in the laning phase. That leaves the last change to top lane being to Rockman, top lane Malphite. He had been doing extremely well ever since his mini rework, but has steadily been dropping in win rate as people readjust to playing versus him again after disappearing from the meta for a little bit. It also doesn't help that some of his biggest counters are S tier at the moment, like Mordekaiser, Nasus, Singed, Alawi, or even that he's got losing matchups into the other decent tanks in the meta like Shen, Mundo, and Sion. Now, don't get me wrong, he might be on a landslide down from S tier, but he should be fine to rock and roll in A tier as he's still a rock solid team fighter. Starting off our S tier roster for the High-ELO top lane list, we got Jax and Kled. As for the A tier changes, we have Teemo surprisingly moving up from B tier. The lane dominance that he brings and the late game objective control that he has thanks to the increased ammo on his ultimate is proving to be quite impactful even at higher levels of play. What's proving to not be impactful though at high levels of play is Akali, at least in top lane for solo queue, so we're moving her down to B tier despite the minor buff to her ultimate. Losing the stun on her ult made her lose a lot of utility for dueling or cancelling TPs, and now she actually has to aim her E instead of it being guaranteed during an all-in combo. Such a rough life for her now. The biggest issue is of course her ultimate CD being over 2 minutes now, meaning if she doesn't get a kill with the first ult she uses, that's enough time for her bot lane to already be 0-6 and she won't be able to snowball in time to carry the game. She just isn't snowballing as reliably anymore to win solo queue games as consistently. The rest of the changes are adding in champions to B tier who received buffs recently like Kayle, Sion, and Heimerdinger. I've actually seen a lot of people practicing Kyle in solo queue to varying degrees of success, not sure. Lastly, Karma, due to the nerf on her Q, is being taken off the list and top laners are so thankful. For the jungle normal list, our starting S tier roster will be Vi, Amumu, Volibear, Nocturne, DR Mundo, Master Yi, Echo, and the return of Nunu and Willem. Why? Apparently the nerfs just weren't enough, and kind of like when Riot nerfs Riven, Nunu players just adjusted to being slightly less overpowered and bounced back to S tier within a week or two. A champion that isn't likely going to recover to his original rank though is Rammus falling from A to B tier. He didn't receive any direct nerfs, but very popular S tier champions he loses to have risen very rapidly into the meta, like Dr. Mundo or Echo, who Riot really wanted to be S tier for some reason, and in my opinion was vastly overbuffed and is my recommendation for champions to pick up in the jungle along with Dr. Mundo. Like, you know these two champions are too strong when Echo's only losing matchup is to Mundo, and Mundo doesn't even have one really. Picking Mundo into an AP heavy team is pretty much like taking candy from a baby, but instead the baby has a keyboard and you're taking LP, not candy from them. As for Echo, you pretty much pick him into any comp and he'll work out because he can go AP Assassin or Bruiser. Speaking of champion recommendations though, let's go right into Flares' pick of the patch, Kha'Zix. He says that Kha'Zix is known to many as one of the best solo queue champions in the game, and for good reason too. Instead of the normal electrocute build, he wants to highlight a new iteration of Kha'Zix that was brought to the forefront thanks to Metaphor in his 46-0 unranked to Challenger on Kha'Zix. With this build, Kha'Zix is more of a bruiser that dishes out consistent damage while managing to have good survivability. You build Red Smite into Black Cleaver as your 2 core items, rounded out with a Death's Dance, Starrock's Gauge, or Guardian Angel. You should evolve Q, W, and then E, although occasionally Metaphor would evolve R if he felt like he needed to gank better. Whenever Kha'Zix doesn't have to actually use his brain and play like an assassin to sneak around, but instead just leap in like a bruiser brain off, that's when the champion is at his best. That leaves us with Graves going from B tier to A tier thanks to the buffs he receives to his base stats, but mostly the base AD that's going to help him clear in the early game and skirmish better. And if this is an indication of anything, the other champions, Jhin and Caitlyn, who got +2 AD, went up by 1% win rate right afterwards, so Graves is likely to repeat that unless he sucks. For the Jungle High-Elo S tier starting roster, we got Karthus, Kha'Zix, Rengar, Nidalee, and Echo. In S tier, we got 2 changes. Echo going up, as previously mentioned, his repeated buffs patch after patch finally net him an S tier spot on our list, and no doubt a good pick rate at Worlds. While Taliyah moves down to A tier due to having bad matchups into the other S tier champions, especially Echo and Kha'Zix, who are becoming seemingly the only 2 junglers I play against recently. DR Mundo, previously thought as to be a low elo jungler only, has been seeing some play on the list and performing well, so we added him to B tier and is a champ to watch out for moving forward. That leaves us with Graves, who has always been a fan favorite for high-elo junglers. If the buffs are enough to push him to A tier, which is definitely possible since the meta suits him as he likes to skirmish versus squishy champions, then no doubt a lot of people are going to pick him up again. This will almost certainly be followed by the Graves player screaming about Season 6 whenever they win a game on him, while trying to relive the glory days of jungle. Something I'd be interested to find out is what roles do you think are the strongest currently for both the normalist and the high-elo one? Post it in the comment section below. Personally, for the high-elo one, I think it goes jungle, support, mid lane, bot lane, and then I don't really care. I don't know what's left after that. But I'm up for some debate over it in the comment section, so come at me. In the mid lane, our starting S tier roster for the normal list will be Malzahar, Lux, Diana, Vel'Koz, Ahri, Swain, Fizz, and newcomers Mordekaiser Echo. Echo, as many of us have noticed, has become quite strong after his latest round of buffs, and since he fits into a skirmish heavy meta, he will easily make it to S tier. Mordekaiser, on the other hand, is more of a counterculture type of champion. He beats up on the melee heavy mid meta as he outtrades, outpushes, and with the slight buff to his W, becomes pretty much impossible to kill for them. Even if an assassin can get ahead due to jungle difference versus Mordekaiser, it doesn't really matter as he will just lock them down with his ultimate during team fights and they won't be able to do anything even if they do make it to the backline. But Adam, couldn't the assassin player buy the item known as Quicksilver Sash? Yeah, they could, but they won't, for the same reason that they don't do it versus Malzahar. They're just lazy and don't feel like it. So if you're looking for a stable anti-assassin mid laner, go with Mordekaiser. Since we're also talking about stable mid laners, let's go right into my pick of the patch, Orianna, going from B tier to A tier. And that's right, I got 2 this week because I'm going back to my mid lane roots. Orianna received a pretty strong buff to her ultimate, allowing her to get an extra chunk of damage, which will make it easier for her to use her game-changing ultimate to win team fights or just set up solo picks. For runes, go Airy or Phase Rush depending on if they have a lot of slows, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, and Gathering Storm versus farm heavy lanes, or Scorch into melee matchups. For secondary, take Magical Footwear and Biscuits. As for items, you're going to want to go Ludens, Sork Boots, Oblivion Orb, and then you can kind of go Banshees or Zanyas if you need defensive items, or finish Morellas for anti-healing. If not, just go Void Staff or Death Cap, depending on which one you need at that point in time. That leaves us with Galio moving from A tier as an anti-assassin pick in the mid lane, but unlike Mordekaiser, actually can match roams and has pretty heavy CC to go along with it. Galio has even increased in popularity since the damage buffs to his W, and you'll likely even see him at Worlds. Heimerdinger, though, is going from B tier to A tier and is a mid laner that likely won't see it play at Worlds, at least not in the mid lane, and hopefully not by Jensen after the last time he played it versus TSM. Once again, since Heimer is receiving a buff to his stun, which will actually impact the duration of his ult stun as well, and his turret DPS is going up, he will fit in quite well in mid lane as an anti-assassin pick. In the mid lane high-elo list, our starting S tier roster will be Talon, Katarina, and Kiana. We got a lot of changes this time around, starting off with Pyke going all the way to A tier thanks to his absurd win rate of 57.44% and a 1.6% play rate, making him the highest win rate out of any champion above 1% for the mid lane. We also got Aesol moving to A tier after the massive buffs to his HP, Orianna moving up to A tier thanks to the command shockwave damage buff helping her burst people down, Echo due to Riot overbuffing him will reach A tier and maybe higher sometime soon, Heimer to B tier as a counterpick to low wave clear assassins, and Nico also going to A tier as a safe utility option versus assassins. Seems like this is a pretty obvious trend of either be an overpowered assassin or be a champion that can beat overpowered assassins in mid lane right now. Moving down from A tier though, we have Sylas. Poor guy is getting the Kassadin treatment and losing a bunch of base armor, but even worse, he's losing 0.5 armor per level as well. He is also losing AoE damage to champions from his passive. This means that just like with Kassadin, if you try to pick Sylas into something like Qiyana, Zed, Talon, Yasuo, you're likely just going to lose. That's because your magic damage shield and your E is pretty useless, and you're going to be extremely squishy and likely to die to a Talon level 2 all-in. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, most champions are going to die to a Talon level 2 all-in, but Sylas just has zero hope and is going to be a liability to his team if you're not using him as a counter pick. With that, we're moving on to the bot lane Normalist S tier starting roster, consisting of Jinx, Misfortune, Jhin, Draven, Yasuo, and perhaps pick of the patch, Caitlyn. He says that Caitlyn was already good, but now she received a slight buff to her AD, which helped with last hitting, harassing, pushing, and creating early leads. Combine that with Xayah, one of the most prominent top tier picks for ADC, getting heavily nerfed, it's no wonder why another champion is taking her place. Also, Caitlyn has a strong early game, which is a good way to keep herself safe against all of the aggressive melee champions that are being played in top lane, mid lane, and jungle. Compare that to Xayah, who no longer has the ability to consistently survive against those champions since the cooldown on her ultimate is so long now. He says to grab your core items and then not to forget to grab Phantom Dancer or GA when going up against aggressive compositions, and you'll find yourself having very consistent success. That means that the only other change to the list will be adding in a mage bot laner Syndra to B tier. Syndra's strength is that she's able to bully lane on her own without having to rely on a support like normal marksman would, while also having absurd kill potential if the support actually happens to do something. Try pairing her up with all-in champions or hook champions like the 4 Hooksmen of the Apocalypse, Pyke, Nautilus, Thresh, and Blitzcrank, or even Leona. It's just free kills over and over again and is easily able to punish picks like Janna or Jinx. So if you're tired of having to rely on your support players to win lane, pick up Syndra and rely on yourself hitting skill shots instead, which, depending on who you are, might or might not be a good idea. I would like to also mention that Ashe is very close to S tier at the moment and may make it there thanks to the buffs on her Q and her passive in the early game, but stay tuned for a patch update next week to find out. We're moving on to the bot lane High-ELO S tier starting roster, consisting of Kai'Sa, Draven, and now Caitlyn for similar reasons as to why she has moved up on the normal list. Since that's the only change, I'm going to make a small suggestion to try out Heimer bot lane once again. With the recent buffs to his stun grenade duration and his turret DPS going up, he might become a viable bot laner once again into marksman matchups. Turrets are going to make it really easy to lane versus all the hook champions, and since it's an assassin meta, he is way easier to defend compared to a regular AD carry because he can build the overpowered item, Zhonya's. Plus, you got that extra tilt factor. No AD carry player likes laning against Heimerdinger. They just get pushed in under tower and then get frustrated at their support player for not being able to engage. Just imagine how angry a Vayne player or a Twitch player would be having to lane against bot lane Heimerdinger and watching their support be completely unable to do anything as they just consistently lose plates and their tower at like 6 minutes into the game. If doing that sounds fun to you, Heimerdinger bot lane is your new pick. Next up, we got the support Normalist S tier starting roster of Brand, Soraka, Janna, Nami, Pyke, Swain, Blitzcrank, and Will's pick of the patch, Nautilus. He says that Nautilus has seen a small rise in the past few patches and is now back where he belongs in S tier. He's incredibly strong against utility and poke supports due to his ability to layer CC and shut them down. He is also good at countering engage supports too, as he can apply his CC to them as soon as they come into range. And unlike some of the other S tier picks, Nautilus is pretty easy to use and doesn't rely on skill shots like Brand or Zyra. I mean, he's got his hook, but you can do the old walk up auto attack into hook or the R into hook and just make it super easy on yourself, which is why Will suggests Nautilus is a fantastic pick for this patch and he definitely recommends you pick him up. As for changes to the list itself, we got Malphite coming out of the Shadow Realm to B tier to take the place of Misfortune. Thank God. He's not that good pre-6, but is kinda like Alistar post-6 without the possibility of headbutting enemies to safety. But more importantly, we got Blitzcrank moving to S tier, let's go. My favorite support, sorry Rakan, it's the truth. Blitzcrank is receiving a range increase on his Q, which is a massive buff for him. I have no doubt in my mind he's going to throw so many people off for the first couple of weeks. People are going to be spamming in all chat, WTF, how did that hook hit me? This buff is going to allow him to get so many extra kills throughout the game, and since he is naturally strong into some of the current S tier roster, like Soraka, Janna, and Nami, he will fit in quite well in S tier. With the bust of Blitzcrank both in TFT and Summoner's Rift, I'm thinking someone at Riot just got promoted who mains Blitzcrank. Last up, we got the support High-ELO S tier starting roster of Rakan, Thresh, Pyke, and Janna. Some of you might be doubting Janna, but she's actually doing extremely well in Masters Plus with a 52.65% win rate and a 9.2% pick rate, which is really strong, and probably the only champion that's close to her is Nautilus at the moment. As for the actual list, just like on the normal list, Blitzcrank is going to move up due to the buff to his range on Rocket Grab, moving him from B tier to A tier. Yuumi though got Shadow Realmed real quick after another set of nerfs to her Q movement speed. I just think it's funny how on release, people were claiming she was the worst champion ever, then Riot was like, no, look, we buffed her, she's OP now. Then the pro players were like, you're right, she is OP, and then she became perma-pick banned. But now, Riot's going back to, why don't we go back to making Yuumi the worst champ in the game? And then they did, or at least they're trying to. She's getting the reverse Echo treatment. She's getting nerfed patch after patch after patch until eventually she's gonna be worse than Tahm Kench. It's just a little sad. Thanks again for watching our tier list video for patch 9.19. Feel free to ask us any questions in the comment section below for us to answer in the next Q&A, and as always, be sure to check out Mobalytics.gg.